Okay, I'll say this right now. Tarantino is a great filmmaker, but I can't recall any filmmaker currently which can delight me so much with pure filmmaking, but at the same time bring so much frustration in some of the things that he does, which prevent his movies from reaching the heights they all should. Is this any different? Let's find out. And with that, I'm working with another episode of The Romantor. My goal, as always, is to enhance the movie watching experience. So once upon a time in Hollywood, this is Tarantino's 9th film. He has one more before he quote-unquote retires, whatever. And here we have his ode to old-time Hollywood. This is a movie based in 1969, which marks kind of kind of a changing of the guard in terms of a Hollywood work, but kind of an age of the loss of innocence here, headlined by, of course, the Charles Manson murders back in those times. Now, I'll say this right now, despite I know there's a lot of talk about this movie and featuring Charles Manson. You see him in the trailer, but he himself has come out, Tarantino, and said this movie is not really about that. And I, which is absolutely accurate. If you're expecting something along those lines, throw those expectations out the window, because Charles Manson himself, the character itself, has more screen time in the trailer than he does in the actual movie. But what this movie does focus on is on DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, who are the headliners here. And this is a great cast, besides obviously those two notable names here. This movie is filled with A-list talent all over the place. The Pacino, Kurt Russell, Dakota Fanning, for example, and Timothy Olyphant. And of course, Margot Robbie, who plays Sharon Tate. Now, I'll say it's about those side characters here. None of them are really giving a lot of screen time. They're there for bits and pieces. Margot Robbie has the most to do, but at the same time, it's kind of disappointing. She wasn't used as well as I thought she should have been. She's extremely talented. And I get what Tarantino was using her for as more of a representation of the innocence, that age of innocence in Hollywood. And I get all that, but I thought and I don't want to spoil anything, based on how this movie ended, I thought that was kind of a misfire. She should have been giving a little bit more to do, or nothing at all for that matter. But that notwithstanding here, let's focus on Brad Pitt and DiCaprio, because these guys shine here. They are fantastic. They bring their A game to this when they're on screen together and when they're going through their scenes separately here. They are so good in what they do. We have Brad Pitt, who's kind of a nonchalant, carefree. He's always kind of in control of what's going on. Nothing really bothers him. And DiCaprio, who's, dealing with his own, I guess, mortality in terms of his acting, was heading to the twilight of his career. Back in the 50s, he had his big TV show, this Bounty Law, whatever the case is. DiCaprio's character is Rick Dalton, so he's a famous Western actor, if you will. But now he's kind of relegated to now just playing kind of these one-shot guest appearances in a lot of these pilots. His career is going, taking a turn for the worse, and he's struggling to deal with that. Now, I'll say about this movie that if overall I enjoyed it. It's very good. As most Tarantino movies are. It's well written. I mean, the craftsmanship is top notch. I mean, the world building Tarantino gives you is fantastic. I mean, it's 1969 Hollywood. The details that are in here, between just from the movies playing in the cinema, the music that's playing in the background, a lot of the news stories and commercials that pop in the background. It just so typifies the time with the hippies and everything. It's so well done. It looks great. It's filmed great, of course. That's what Tarantino does so well. The music he incorporates into the film is always good. Not as good as his previous works, but still fine. And he brings out great performances, particularly in DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, because these guys are, like I said, they are stellar. Now, what's interesting here is that this movie has no real narrative per se. These guys are kind of just hanging out. This is what Tarantino mentioned. These two characters that kind of have this bromance, this friendship, and they're kind of just hanging out and doing things and progressing through this 1969 and in different parts of the year. Each one dealing with their own thing and then coming together. But it's kind of weird because it kind of just meanders around from one scene to another. Almost feels like an episode of Seinfeld, where it's a show about nothing. This movie is really about nothing, just these two characters. But that's what he was going for, so it's not like he was aiming to give us a great story and he failed to do so. This was his goal, to give us something. These guys hanging out. This is his ode to that time, old school Hollywood, and is given us through the eyes of these two particular characters. And there's some really great scenes here. It's very funny, well directed and acted. But again, my issues go with what sometimes Tarantino frustrates me with, is that the movie is about 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's a little bit long. There's a lot of scenes in there which are cool and really well done. They're great scenes in and of themselves. but don't really add or push the story forward a lot. He could have chopped down a lot of it. This could have been no more than 2 hours, and it happens a lot, whether it be in The Hateful Eight, with his last movie, which I thought was good, but about 45 minutes too long. And Tarantino can't help himself. He's very verbose, to say the least. He has great dialogue, as he always does, but sometimes too much of it. He's very self-indulgent when it comes to his movie filmmaking, and this is no different. And I'll say this, at times at that length, there were scenes that just kind of like, okay, what are we doing here? What's going on? And I was entertained for the most part. But again, sometimes it's like need to find more direction on what he's doing here. This is a movie which is better than A Hateful Eight, but doesn't reach near the heights of Django Unchained, Pulp Fiction, obviously, Inglourious Basterds. It's a good film, well done. It's not up there with other quality of movies. And I'll say this, the ending is vintage Tarantino, which really saved this movie for me. If this movie didn't end the way it did, I would have been a little bit disappointed coming out of it, but he gives us a lot of that bravado, a little over-the-top, ultra-violent action in the end, which really pays off and kind of brings things together a little bit, but really leaves you satisfied, because that's exactly what I like about Tarantino sometimes, is his over-the-top nature. It's not excessive, maybe unnecessary, but it's wildly entertaining nonetheless, and it worked really well. And I brought a big smile on my face, and that really, it left me leaving the theater with, with a smile and saying, okay, it ended well, and I was happy about that, despite the fact that it took a long time to get there and he could have trimmed a little fat there. But again, a good film. I recommend. You're a Tarantino fan, you're probably gonna like it. Brad Pitt, DiCaprio, fantastic. Great technical filmmaking here. And that is the job well done. It's just not a movie that I would love, that I wanted to love, and I didn't. And it's just not as strong as some of his other films. But overall, good movie making, entertaining. You guys should enjoy, particularly if you're fans of Tarantino. So, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you guys want to check it out? Comment below, let me know where you guys thought. And of course, if you haven't done so already, subscribe below and feed my need to go to the movies and talk about it afterwards. See you guys next time.